I'll just tell this meeting is now live stream. Okay, good. So we are actually having this live stream as well. Yeah, so let me do the introduction first, and after that I will hand it over to you. And I have already informed the students about the format. So it's going to be primarily a question answer sessions. But I'll request you if you can start with they already have seen that entire list of videos that you have on YouTube on the design for a better world. I'm assuming that they would have a lot of questions to begin with, but I'll still request if you can start with a short address of 5 to 10 minutes, and then we can start the discussion going. And again, just to give you the context, so these are all school students from Delhi NCR region, schools around 9 to...
इसकी ऑडियो नहीं
School students from Delhi NCR schools, from 10th to 12th students primarily, and they are participating in this Humanistic Design Summit. This Design Summit is just a way to give students an taste of what it means to apply design principles for civilizational challenges, as you rightly put it. And I will also share with you the link that the kind of design challenges that we are going to give the students after they have done with the workshop. And they will work on it for the next 3 weeks, and there will be a final judging of them. Okay, so with that, welcome everyone. Please keep your video muted, and we would like to see your face. I don't see any face. So please switch on your video. It is not a request. We are asking you, we have told you enough. I think you can follow simple instructions. Thank you. I can see some faces now. Let me first introduce you, Professor Don Norman, to all of you. And then I think Professor Don Norman will have a short address of 5 to 10 minutes, but I would request all of you to ask questions. This is going to be an interactive Q&A session. Professor Don Norman doesn't like to give talk because he believes people go to sleep in talks mostly. So, but let me start the formal introduction. Firstly, I won't bore you with a detailed biography of Don as it's readily available online, and there are several sites which we can find. Undoubtedly, he is one of the most searched figures whenever the term design arises. An interesting fact about Don is that he has retired 6 times. If at all, this shows how many times.
5.
Hi.
Only 5.
Oh, only 5. Okay. It says on the internet 6. Okay. So only 5 times. If at all, this shows how many times he has reinvented himself. With about 20 authored books, many of them are bestsellers. Don's impact on the field is undeniable. Having said that, I would like to share something about my personal interaction with Don. As part of a different university, when I was the coordinator of a course titled Design Thinking, I came across Don's recent book idea, Design for a Better World. And that resonated with me so much, I decided to write to him, thinking that he won't respond, being such an extremely busy person. But to my surprise, he promptly responded, and the warmth with which he engaged subsequently in several online conversations has truly touched. Through his book, Design for a Better World, he makes a persuasive case for how design as an approach needs to be applied to possibly address large civilizational challenges faced by us. He's extremely passionate about engaging with young minds, and the fact that he is connecting with us from across the world at about 9 p.m. of his time is a testament to that. And I'm really looking forward to your talk, Don, as I've already, I've really enjoyed your talk. Over to you.
Thank you. And welcome, everybody. I'm pleased to be here, to be in India. So let me give a brief introduction. I have written many books in design, but it's important to realize I didn't start off as a designer. I started off with a degree in electrical engineering, and then I got a second degree in electrical engineering because I was interested in building intelligent machines. But that was a very long time ago because I'm very old. I'm 88 years old. And so that was a long time ago. And I wanted to study computers, but nobody was teaching computers. So I got a master's degree in electrical engineering, and then I discovered psychology, and I decided, oh, if I can't build an intelligent machine, maybe I will study this to see how it works. And that was sort of the beginning. And I've taught at schools like Harvard, and then I joined the University of California, San Diego, where I started a field called Human Information Processing Psychology, trying to understand the principles, the psychological principles of how we behave, how we think, how we work. Uh, but that struck me as too narrow. I wanted to make sure we brought in computer science and the new field of artificial intelligence. And I was already publishing papers in artificial intelligence. And I wanted to also include language, linguistics, and the social sciences, anthropology, sociology. And so uh, I started a new department called cognitive science that still exists, and cognitive science is now a well-established discipline. Uh, but what happened along the way is that I got very interested in the new computers that were coming out, and I was already using them, but I thought they were very difficult to use, not because they were too complicated to understand, but because they were badly designed. And so I started looking at how we could design computers better, and I started consulting for a company called the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, which invented the very first easy to use computers and also Apple Computer. And I discovered that my students had already been working at Apple and helped develop the very first Macintosh, which was actually based upon the work from Xerox. So I was a consultant for Xerox and a consultant for Apple. And I then decided to retire. So I retired from the university. That was my first retirement. And I went to Apple, where I became a vice president of what's called advanced technology. So it's the research group. And there I helped bring out, well, I started by saying the user experience is important. And I named myself the user experience architect of Apple. And that was the first time the words user experience had been used as a job title. And we worked very hard to improve the way that Apple computers were designed. I won't go on and give you the rest of my career, but that's kind of the beginning of my introduction to design. And I wrote the book Design of Everyday Things because I was so frustrated with trying to open doors, uh, work the water taps, do everyday things. Why was it so difficult? And so I tried to get people to be interested and curious. I tried to, if you've read the book, has people read the book, do you think? Yes, okay. The purpose of the book is to get you excited about the powers of design, to realize it isn't just making something pretty, but you can make things that people can use, they can understand, and that you can. And usually, when someone makes an error, they blame themselves. No, almost always it's the design is bad. So that's what I did. Now I'm going to just jump to where I am today. After doing many other things and retiring a whole bunch more times, I retired 4 times, and the head of the University of California, San Diego, came to my home in Silicon Valley and said, "Please come back to the university and start a design group." And he said, "There are 2 requirements. First, it has to be important. Second, it has to be exciting." I could not resist. So I started a new design group in the city of San Diego. And I retired from that about 7 years later, my 5th retirement. And I said, what will I do now? And I realized the world is in trouble. There are problems all over the world. And some of them are because there are wars taking place. Some of them are territorial problems. Some of them are due to economic problems. Uh, but also a lot are due to the changes in the whole world because of human behavior. Climate change is what we mostly notice. And so climate change is actually here, and it's causing fires, it's causing droughts, it's causing hunger, it's causing floods, high windstorms. It is very, very bad. And I said, what can I do about that? I don't want to write another book, how to make things easier to use and understand, because that's important. But it's even more important to tackle the problems in the world. And so I wrote the book that is designed for a better world, meaningful, sustainable, humanity centered. And one thing I said was that there are many reasons for what's wrong with the world. And I have tried to explain most of them. And I tried to show you the solutions. And the solutions have been well known for years. And I said, why haven't they been done? And the problem is the power structure of the world. And I thought designers could play a very important role here. And so I try to position designers because when you learn design, you learn to make the world a better place for people. We are not artists. Artists don't design for other people. They design for their own emotions. They want to express themselves. That's important. It's really good for the world, but it's not the same thing as design. In design, we design for other people, which means we have to understand people and their problems and their capabilities. So what I teach in the design of everyday things is wrong, but you should still learn it because everything in the book is correct. What is wrong is the things that are not in the book. So I don't talk about the fact that in order to get the wonderful materials for which we make computers and automobiles and cell phones and kitchen appliances, we destroy the earth. And that when we manufacture, we pollute the earth. And because companies like to say, we don't want you to, if what they make lasts a very long time, well, gee, uh, they don't stay in business. So they want things that you have to buy a new one every few years. And that pollutes the world because they make it hard to repair, hard to take it apart, to reuse the components. And so that is polluting the world. And digital technology, well, first of all digital technology works on physical technology. It uses electricity a lot. Second, we are using that to addict people. We use special techniques to make things exciting and interesting. You don't want to stop. And so the worst part has been the social media, where all of many people in this audience spend more hours than you're comfortable with because it's once you start, it's really hard to stop. And that's harming the world. And we're harming cultures because colonialism was done by the Western powers. Now, West isn't just isn't a compass direction. Western powers are mostly Europe, but also the United States, also Australia, maybe Japan. Like the Western powers colonized the world. They went to places where the West hadn't been before, and they said, "Oh, we discovered new land." No, they didn't discover it. People are already living there. And they told the people they had to live the same way they live. And so they enforced the Western way of life and the Western rules and laws upon the world. That's colonialism, but that's what designers do. We teach designers to go to a place where there's difficulties and we study it, design research, and we figure out what the solution is, and then we develop the solution, and then we go back and give it to the people. We don't ask them if that's what they want. We don't even know whether they can actually use. And if it breaks, can they actually repair it? Probably not. And many of the things that we do in the developed countries and even in India in the big cities, that assumes that there is electricity and water and air conditioning and heating. But in the isolated villages, again, even in India, but around the world, no, we don't have good water. No, we don't have continual electricity. No, we can't afford heaters or especially air conditioners. So what works in the laboratory or in the big cities doesn't work for everybody. So the other principle of what I call humanity-centered design is, besides looking at the whole system of the world so that we don't make sure we don't destroy the world, but also don't tell people what to do. If you go to a place that has problems, they know about the problems. We don't have to study it. They know what they are. And there are many intelligent people in the world. So they often are trying to already address the problems, but they may need help. If they're doing a public health thing or sanitation or medical or even education, they may need some expert guidance. So we can help provide that guidance. They may also need government support and they don't know how to get to the government. Well, maybe we can help them reach the government. But so the designers should be advisors and mentors, but the ideas have to come by the people and together with the people. So that's the entire argument. It's more complex than that, but in simple terms, that's what the book is about. And so I think many of you have already experienced both of those books, Design of Everyday Things and Design for a Better World. So the reason I don't want to give a lecture is I don't really know what you're interested in. And I could give a really wonderful lecture that you didn't care about. If I answer your questions, I know that you must care because that's why you asked the question. So I want real questions, not a question because the professor said you must ask a question. Ask a question because you want to know. And after you ask a question, don't go away. I might want to ask you a question. For example, I might say, well, why did you ask that question? That's a really interesting question, but why did you ask it? And I want you to be able, after I finish with my answer, you might want to say, well, maybe, but ask me another question. So we will have a discussion. Okay, we're off.
Okay, thank you, Professor. So I think, yeah, anyone who wants to ask a question, you can either put it on the chat box, or I think it's best to be switch on your video and ask it directly to Professor Donman. And you can also raise your hand if you want to ask the question. Yes. Maybe some of the questions that you asked to the first session yesterday can also be asked to Professor Donman. Just give the context about what she was presenting.
I forgot to give you the warning that the hardest thing to do is to get the first question.
Yeah.
And so I usually ask the professor to develop at least one or two questions to get it started.
Yeah. No, I have questions, but I'm just waiting for them to start. Sia, I can see your hand. Yes, please go ahead.
Right. So I just wanted to ask, how can we get the designers to hold power? Because often they're not the one defining the product. So how do we give them power?
Are you talking about in a company?
Right.
Yes. I'm glad you asked that question. It's one of my favorite questions. And I say, well, I like to give long answers. And you'll see why, because I think it helps understand the issue. In 1970, a long time ago, a famous designer at the time, Victor Papanek, he wrote a book, and the very first sentence of the book was, "There is no field more dangerous than design." And then he said, why? Because designers make all this crap that destroys the world, that people buy even though they don't need it and they don't want it and they don't use it. Why is it we do that? And then he said, well, actually, there may be one field that's worse, and that's advertising, which convinces people. You've seen that before? You're smiling. Okay. But he was wrong. And why he was wrong? He was correct in what he described, but it wasn't the fault of the designers. Because designers are in a middle level. Designers are almost never in power. They have to do what their bosses tell them to do, what the people in the company decide should be done. Or if you're in a private organization, if you're running your own design company, what your clients ask for. So how do we change that? So one thing I keep telling designers, engineers are trained in engineering, and how come they become chief engineering officer or chief product officer, or they become the head of the company? Why can't designers do that? Well, what do designers have to know? If you move up, you get promoted. See, designers are so proud of their skills, their wonderful craft skills. They make these beautiful things and wonderful things. But no, that's not how you get promoted. If you tell your bosses that I do really wonderful work, so can't you promote me to be a manager or a director or something? They'll say, well, tell me more about why you should be that. Do you know what is required? And no, designers don't know. And if designers get promoted, they often hate it because, oh, I love to design and now I can't design. I have to take care of people or I have to worry about finances and money. Yes, that's true. If you want to get, we need leaders who understand how a company works. Now, we teach designers to understand the language of their customers, so understand what people do and how they need what they need. Well, one of your customers is the people you work for. So you have to understand their language and what they need. And their language is spreadsheets, finance. Because if a company doesn't make money, the company goes out of business. So it does nobody any good. So you have to learn about finance. And then you have to learn about politics because different parts of the company are often competing. And believe it or not, they're not collaborating, they're competing because there are only so many resources and they want to get more of the resources for their division. And so you have to learn about politics. And many problems require governments to make different decisions and different rules. So you have to understand that. When I was at Apple, when I became a vice president, it was the best job I'd ever had because it's true, I could no longer do the work I was known for. But what I could do is I had people doing wonderful projects in many, many different fields. And I would love to learn about each one. So I could simply go to each of them and say, I want you to meet with me every week and teach me what you're doing so I can support it better. And I also went to the United States Capitol in Washington, and I talked to the Federal Communications Commission, and I helped get the first Wi-Fi band available. And I also went to Washington and we worked with other computer companies and we got the new high definition television standards adopted. And to do that, I had to spend a week or 2 weeks in Washington talking to the legislature, to the Congress people, explaining what we wanted and why. And I also knew every single member of the Federal Communications Commission and what they cared about, because that's what you have to do to convince people. You can't say, I have a great idea, give me money or give me wireless spectrum. No, other people wanted the same thing. So we had to have a good argument why this was good for the world and good for the country. So the answer to your question is, if you think your company is not doing well for the world, do not go and tell that to your managers. They don't want to hear you say that. It's not because they don't want to know, but they want you to tell them the solution. Now, if the company is making products and you say we need the circular economy so things can be repaired and last a longer time, they say, oh, but we make our money selling new products and so we won't make money anymore. We'll go, well, what's the answer? There is an answer. Can you think of it? Well, there's a field called service design. Now, almost everything's a service. If I buy a camera, oh yeah, I love the camera, but I don't buy it because I love the camera. I buy it because of what it does. It provides a service. It provides enjoyment. I can take pictures of things and I can put them on my walls, or I can save them to remember experiences. That's a service. And an automobile, yeah, you might like the automobile. It might be fun to drive, but it's a service. It makes you travel from one place to another. So why don't we sell services? I won't sell you a camera. I'll sell you a service. So basically, for a monthly fee, you can have this camera. And if the camera breaks, we'll fix it. Or if you decide you need a different camera, yeah, you can trade it in. And the automobile, why do you own an automobile? Most cars are parked. They're not even driven. They don't even drive. Most of the cars spend most of their time in the parking lot. And so why not make it that we rent the car? We subscribe to the car. BMW did this. It was wonderful. I was in Germany and We were walking around and we said, "Oh, well, let's have dinner at this wonderful restaurant, but it's far away, so we need a car." So one of the people just took out his phone and said, "Okay, oh, there's some cars just a few meters away." And so we go there and we looked at the cars and chose one, and because he subscribed to the service. So once he chose the car, the phone automatically unlocked the car, and we all got in and drove to dinner. And then when we came back, he took us to our homes and said, "Okay, and let me find a place to leave the car." And found a nearby place where you could leave the car. And then, so you only had the car when you needed it. And that meant if you commuted to work, you had a small car. But on the weekends, you might take your family driving someplace. So you would get a big car. It's a service, and it works really wonderfully. And it doesn't cost any more than buying the car, actually. So that's the answer. But you have to provide it and show people how to make it work. As I said, a very long answer, but it was a really good question because it hit many of the important issues that I worry about. Are you happy with the answer? But it means more work for you because it means you have to learn about more fields. But that also means you're going to be more persuasive. And guess what? When you learn about a field that's going to be important for what you're doing and working, it becomes interesting, even though you didn't think it would be interesting.
I think Priyanshi has a question.
Yes, sir. Greetings, sir. I have a question. I actually have two questions. So the first one is, what is your criteria to decide that this is a good design?
Good, good, good. That's an interesting word because good is relative. Good depends upon what you're using the design for. If there's, I wrote a book called Emotional Design, and on it I had this wonderful device, funny shape, that's called the juicy serif. It's a way of making juice from oranges or lemons or whatever, but it doesn't work very well. But it's kind of weird and attractive, and so I have one of those, but it's not in my kitchen. It's in my living room. To me, it is art and sculpture, and I enjoy looking at it. And I once did use it to make orange juice. It wasn't very easy to use. So it's what I like about it, and it's good because I like it. I love the appearance, and yeah, I can sort of make orange juice with it. So is it good at making orange juice? No. Is it good for me? Yes. So good is, does it fit the purpose? Does it make you smile? Is it fun to use or fun to look at or enjoyable or makes you think? And maybe it isn't even fun. Maybe it's a horrible thing, but it's good because it maybe reminds you of things that we want to avoid or not do. So good is defined by what the purpose is and how people want to use it.
Okay. I also have a second question, which is,
Okay means you're happy with that or not?
yeah, kind of. I understand that purpose is the main thing that defines the design and its success. So my second question is, how can design be used to restore or sustain traditions, culture, and customs?
Ah, because the West, especially in India, has destroyed a lot of your cultures and the way we used to live and the indigenous ways of living. And so how can we restore that? Well, in many ways, the answer has to come from you, not you, the individual, but the people in the audience, the young people of today who are going to go out and make a difference in the world. But what you have to do is, first of all, learn about the traditional cultures that we value. There may be some traditional cultures that we don't want to repeat. So it isn't that all cultures have been good forever, but learn about what's good and try to figure out how we can implement it, how we can help people, how we can bring back some of the old ways. Here, a simple example that applies to India is heating and cooling a home or a building. because we've adopted the Western ways of building buildings, we've ignored where the sun comes from, or we've ignored the location of the building. We just build these beautiful buildings with glass walls and so on. And then we build very expensive heating for the summer, for the winter, and air conditioning for the summer. And the heating and air conditioning destroys the atmosphere. So, but in the old days, we didn't do it that way. We didn't have air conditioners, but we built a building so that, first of all, you could have a ledge above every window. So in the summer, the sun is higher. And so the sun would hit the ledge and the window would be in shade. And in the winter, the sun is lower. And so the sun would come into the windows and warm up the inside. Second, we could make thicker walls that insulate and retain a constant temperature. So that means in the daytime, it keeps you cool, and at night, it keeps you warm. And third, we can make what's called wind tunnels. We can make it so that the building is designed so that air comes into the bottom and rises up to the top. And as it does, it causes a breeze throughout the whole building and cools the building. No moving parts. And so that was done for a long time in India, and it got lost. But some architects are now trying to recreate it. But that's how we bring back the old values, by learning about them and by applying them where it makes sense. Thank you.
I think
I see
Vavish.
lots of hands, so
Yeah,
maybe
lots
I
of hands.
shorter
Yeah,
answer.
so Bhavishya, I think. Bhavishya, yeah, yes.
Yes, sir, Bhavishya. Good evening, sir. Sir, my doubt was that how do we know what is important for people? Before giving a solution, we need to have a problem. And how do we know if the solution is satisfactory to the people? Because if it's not, then for them it's not useful, right?
So there are two questions there. The first question is, how do we know about what the important problems are? That's not hard. In fact, it's easy to find more problems than we have solutions for. But people go hungry. People are not well educated, or people don't have enough money to afford to have their children go to school and continue in school. We need to send them to work at an early age, or there are fights in it. There are lots of problems, or they have a home that is not really big enough for the family. And there are just many different kinds of problems that we can address. So the water level is rising, and we have to do something so we can't live there anymore unless we put the houses up at height with stilts, which is one solution, or we move the houses someplace else, which is another solution, or we build barrier reefs that prevent the water from coming in, which is another solution. It's easy to find the problems. Now, how do we know they're the right solutions? That's why I say we should not see. You said, suppose we devise a solution, but it's not the right one, because you devised a solution without talking to the people. The solution has to come from the people, because they know what is good for them. They know what they can maintain. They know what they can repair. They know what fits their lifestyles. So we have to work with societies. So the fifth principle of humanity-centered design is we design with or by the community. We don't design for them, we design with them. And that's how we know that it's going to work for those people. By the way, it's easy to say that. But when you go into a community, it's very hard because, well, first of all, the community is not one person, it's many people. And they have many opinions, and they may contradict each other. So you have to work with them for some time to get a common point of view and a common answer. But you can do it. All important problems are hard. So this one's hard, which is how you know it's important.
Thank you, sir.
Well, there are hands. We need another question.
I think it's Aradhya. Yes.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. It's I'm from India. Good morning. So actually, I had a question that how can we design architecture that's means it can integrate with the ecosystem, serving as both functional structures for human use and enhancing biodiversity and environmental sustainability. Like we have seen in many places due to the architecture, when natural calamities come, floods, like floods and earthquake, the architecture, they're not supporting the human race. So how can we design a architecture with humanistic development that can support the human race in any climatic conditions and help us to seemingly grow more and more? That was my question. Thank you, sir.
Well, wait a minute. You use the example of wood, that we might want to, build more things out of wood? Was that the suggestion?
Also, like any natural calamity, like floods, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. Yeah, and like in today's world, we don't know what will happen next. What other calamity? Like in 2019, the COVID came, and we were not at all prepared for that. Then, it's like this. I wanted to ask my question.
Well, why do you think there's a problem? I mean, we have to stop using the materials. Concrete is a bad material to build with, because in making concrete, we produce huge amount of carbon dioxide, which leads to global warming. Wood
Yes,
is good because it captures the carbon. And if we actually burn wood, that releases the carbon. So that's bad. Uh, can we use wood to build structures? Of course, we do it all the time. And one of the most powerful woods is bamboo, because it grows very, very rapidly and is amazingly strong. And so bamboo is being used around the world to build very wonderful large structures. In fact, to repair structures, we often have bamboo scaffolding that goes up very high in the air, which shows how strong bamboo is. And teak is another good wood because it's easy. It's easy to reuse, and it's easy to grow. And in general, biological substances and biological things based on biology are what we should be building more with, because even if you just throw it away, it decays naturally and provides fertilizer for further growth of plants. So I don't see any major problem. The problem is not that we don't know how to use these substances. The problem is that we tend to use things like steel, concrete, and worse, concrete and steel mixed together. And we tend to use things that are very, very harmful to the atmosphere.
sir. So, and I wanted to ask one more question, that how can we leverage humanistic design principles so as to create an emotional touch and that fosters a deeper sense of empathy and connection with our increasingly digital world? Like right now, everything is going virtual now. Like we are connected to a meeting. So, means how can we design more advanced? That's why my question. Thank you, sir.
We know how to do that. That's, I mean, part of that, the answer is in the design of everyday things, how we design in a way that people enjoy and they can use. And I have another book called Emotional Design that explains about the power of emotion and why emotion is very important. You know, we have two different ways of behaving. One of them is cognition, which is where we try to understand the world. The other is emotions, where we make judgments. Is this good or bad, safe or dangerous? And we need both of those, absolutely both. People who don't have emotions don't function well. And people who don't have cognition, they don't function well either. We need both. And so, yes, I've written books about how we do that. It's not hard. In fact, most good design schools, I assume, including where you are right now, will teach those rules and methods. Am
Yes,
I right?
yes, sir. It is, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we go to Navya.
Greetings, sir. Good evening to you. So basically, my question is like nowadays, like people used to make these designs basically for, I feel like, for the human life to be easier. But now I feel like some make it for the benefit of the environment, and some make it for the so that the human life is easier. So I would like to hear your views on this, please.
Let me understand the question, which is that because one thing is most of our designs are trying to help the way we live to make our lives easier and more pleasant. And now we have to worry, though, about the things that are happening in nature, and we have to somehow manage to live despite the major changes that are happening. Yes, but that doesn't contradict still the need that our solutions should be ones that are pleasurable, enjoyable, and that function well and help us live better. I don't see that there's a conflict.
Okay.
Now, here is where one of the conflicts is. A lot of the problems we call in the engineers to solve, and the engineers will build ugly, horrible things in order to prevent flooding or in order to prevent fires or whatever. And oftentimes they interfere with the way that we're actually trying to live. So we can't let the engineers design it. We need the engineers, but they also need us. They don't know that. That's the problem. And that's because design doesn't tell its story very well. But if designers would collaborate with engineers, we'd have better work, because the engineers shouldn't be afraid of us. In designing modern computer systems, designers and engineers often work together to create things that not only function well, but are easy to use, and we can know what to do when things go wrong. Well, we have to do the same in designing things to prevent floods or things to prevent fires or windstorms. But there's no conflict. It's just that different professions have different skills, and our skill is about making things that function well and are enjoyable for people. But we don't do that by ourselves. In fact, a design is an idea. Someone else has to build it and construct it. And so we have to team up with the programmers, with the engineers, with the civil engineers, with the marketing people, with the finance people, so that it comes out to make for a better life.
Thank you, sir.
But I just want to emphasize again, design is not the solution to everything. I think personally design should be part of the solution, but the solution requires many different talents and skills to work together in a collaborative way.
Dargi?
Hello, sir. The question I had was that how does a designer think about whether the product is going to be a huge hit or success at first? And how do we keep making sure that it works and is used by the public? Because there are often times where when the product is released, it is used quite often and is, highlighted a lot. But then there are times when after 5 or 10 years, it goes into the dim light and it's not even looked at.
Yes, that's life. How do you know? Well, you do your best. You do trials. We build a small amount first and we test it and we let people use it. But some things we don't know. So lots of good products have failed. They fail for lots of complex reasons. But that's, again, in the world where I come from in California, there are many companies that get started and most of them fail. And it doesn't mean that they're bad ideas. In fact, in the funding, we have what we call venture capitalists who fund these startups. And quite often, they know that most of the startups they fund will fail. But the only way you'll get some new, wonderful new ideas is to try, because you cannot predict, because they can fail for all sorts of reasons. One of my favorite stories is when I first joined Apple, they were about to bring out a new product, and I looked at that product and I said, wow, this is going to change the world. And Apple built it, and it didn't sell very well. They built a second version. It didn't sell very well. They built a third version. It didn't sell very well. So Apple said, well, we're not going to ever do this again. Was I wrong? No, I wasn't. I was absolutely right. But what I was wrong about was how long it was going to take. It took about 20 years. The first product, what was it? Most of you don't realize Apple ever built this. Apple built one of the very first digital cameras. Camera that didn't require film. In fact, it's so long ago, some of you don't even know what film is. It was chemical. It was a piece of plastic, if you will, cellophane, in which chemicals were on it, and you expose it briefly to light, and that kept the image. But then you had to pass it through various chemicals until you got something you could print on paper and use. Very complex, but that's the way they were all done. And this was just as easy as a camera, except it wasn't a really good picture. And you could only take 8 pictures at a time in the camera. That's all the memory could hold. Well, none of that was a problem, because so not such a great picture, but it's great for pictures of your family or for some vacation you took. And 8, well, that's all a roll of film could take, was 8. So that was okay. And you couldn't see what you're taking a picture of. There was no screen. But that was okay, because the normal cameras didn't have that either in those days. But the real problem was nobody knew what to do with it. How do you get the picture out? How can you make a copy of it? How can you print it? We didn't have color printers. And so it was just too early. But today, well, everybody carries a phone in their pocket. It's called a smartphone, and it makes wonderful pictures. So there are lots of products that are good and fail because they may be too early, or maybe in the beginning they're far too expensive. Look, Apple just brought out this new augmented reality system that costs how many thousands of dollars? Who's going to buy that? Why does it cost so much? Well, because at the beginning it costs more money, but by having it cost a lot, only a few people will buy it. But those few people are special, because those are people that have enough money to buy it, and they'll experiment with it, and they'll find out what's bad about it, but also what's good about it. And over time, the prices will come down. Will that ever become a very successful product? We do not know the answer. And the only way to find out the answer is to try. So there's no simple answer to your question, because we cannot predict, well, I tell a joke, we cannot predict the future. Here's my joke, because a friend of mine who actually won the Nobel Prize, he's a very smart friend, once said, it's easy to predict the future. People do it all the time. The hard part is getting it right.
Yes. Okay, we go to Arman.
Hello, greetings, sir. So my question to you is, because you have worked in Apple, and Apple is one of the pioneers of design. So over the years, we have seen that the role of bright colors has gradually reduced, and we have come down to a more so-called mellowed down, limited to black, white, and gray shades in terms of color. So why is that? What is the reason behind us going from bright colors to so some very few shades that are generic?
It's called fashion. Bright colors, primary colors are attractive, automatically attractive. And so what happens if we make them all the bright colors, etc., the kind of colors that we make for children, for example, sophisticated people say, no, that's not very sophisticated. It's very elementary. It's I want something that's more sophisticated. So they will tend to say we need for more variety of colors and not so extreme, less saturated, unsaturated, and maybe minor variations on the hue. And in the fashion industry, people love to make changes like that. And every couple of years, they make different changes. But there's no real reason behind it. It has to do with commerce and what would, and so if we can make clothes go out of fashion, you have to buy new clothes. One of the world's worst polluting fields is fashion. A huge number, like 30 or 40% of clothes get thrown away without ever having been worn. And it's in part this fashion that we want to change the colors, or we want to use flat colors, or want to use round colors. We want to use even the computer companies like Microsoft and Google like to change the color palette that is being used periodically. And there's no, the argument is about marketing, about what sells, not because it's any better. Sometimes it's worse. And the real problem is that people also forget that the reason that we put birds on screens is to help people use things. And that, but oh, it's considered ugly to have lots of words. And so we tend to use, Apple especially is guilty, either no words at all. You just have to learn and memorize gestures, or we use such tiny print that nobody can read it. Or you use light gray print on a slightly darker gray background, which is almost impossible to read. So in my opinion, all of that is done for the wrong reasons. So I can't give you the reasons. I can just say, I don't approve of them.
I agree with it.
Thank you, sir, for the answer.
Navya, can we see you also as you ask your question?
Good morning, sir.
Good evening.
My question is, so we often hear about strategic designs and product designs, and how are they related or similar to human-centric designs, or are they different?
Here's the point. What I'm trying to do is say we must take an account of a large number of different things. That we must take a system-wide view. We must respect the learnings and opinions of the people we're building for. So what am I going to call that? And so, we actually have to be respectful. Just my computer again. I'm not at home. I'm in Mexico, the country right next to my home. And so I'm in a hotel room on my laptop instead of my normal big fancy microphone and big monitors and good camera. So please excuse me, but
yeah, I think
where was I going?
So I think you are answering Navya's question, which where Navya asked, like, what is the difference between design for a product versus design for it? Yes.
So what am I going to call this new kind of design? And I said, well, I want to call it's human-centered design, but it's not human. It's more than that. It's different. But I want to call it centered design, and I want a short word. And so people call it planet-centered, people-centered, earth-centered. I call it humanity-centered. I think we all mean the same thing. There's no way you can choose one word that captures all the meanings. So you have to look at not the name, but what is inside the name, what people really mean by it. And I think all of us who have these slightly different names, we want to protect the environment and save the environment and restore the environment and protect human dignity and human rights and the lives of people of all cultures. But if you say that's what you want, and now you want 3 or 4 words to describe that, what would you choose? There is no perfect choice. So I think the question, what are the differences, is there really aren't any.
Okay, thank you.
Ananya?
Yeah, good morning, sir. My question to you is that we live in an era where digital models such as our mobile phones, laptops, and earphones are based on the principle that we need to spend more and buy again, and this is leading to a wastage of major products and many more resources. And capitalism is a major issue that is leading to this. So, what are our opinions on this, and how do you think we can overcome this issue, this disparity that we are going through? Thank you, sir.
So why do you agree? Why do you agree to buy a new phone every 2 or 3 years, or to buy a new computer, or to buy a new dress or skirt or blouse or hat or whatever? So the first thing is the people. So why is that you fall for all of this and say, oh, it must be new, it must be in fashion, I don't want to wear something that, oh, it's too old, no one else is wearing it, they all have new clothes and new things. So that's one thing. And
yeah, sir. It's my opinion on this is that the companies, they have the strategy of, destroying their products by updates, and they force the people on buying new things by mutually destroying their earlier products.
So it's,
By
by the way, this is not the problem with capitalist systems. It's a problem with today's capitalism.
Yeah.
But capitalism is really simply a way of competing. The correct view of capitalism is that different companies compete, which makes the products better because they want to make their product different than the others, but also better. Now, it could also mean just as good, but cheaper, or it could also mean that it may function for, it may be better for a few things, but not for everything. But the people who need those few things will buy it. So there are different ways of competing. But what you were talking about is the short-term view of today's capitalism, where people want immediate profits from the investment. And that, I think, is wrong. And that's what we have to stop. We have to take a long-term view of things. And so we do have to change the economic system. But don't blame the notion of capitalism. Blame the way it has been, the way it's done today, and especially in the Western countries. But what the problem is, the Western countries have imposed this view upon the entire world. So, but some of the behavior has to change from people like you. Don't go changing your clothes. Now, that seems to me there was a great man in the history of India called Gandhi, I think his name was, who didn't particularly pay any attention to the clothes he wore the same clothes over and over again, the same kind of very minimum clothes, and yet he was extremely influential. It's not the clothes you wear, it's not the new things you buy that make it important.
Okay, thank you very much.
Don, we are just going over time. I'm just worried about, we can go as long as you can, but obviously I'm worried about your calendar. Do you think that we can have, because considering there are 4 questions, do you think you can spare more 15 minutes of your time?
Yes, you actually had originally scheduled it for 9:45.
Yeah, to 10:15. Yeah, I know. Yeah, so that's fine.
But I also have to, I'm at a conference, and so I'm being picked up from my hotel early in the morning tomorrow morning.
True.
But remember, for me, this is the evening.
Yes, this is night. You have to go to bed. Yeah, I totally understand.
I have to go to bed because I have to wake up early.
Yes. So we have 5 questions here, and one question was there from on chat. So I think these 6 questions would be the last 6 questions we'll be taking. And maybe before Shia comes in, because she has already asked a question, and we'll take the other question by Ansh. Okay, now we'll go to Shreyans.
Yes, good evening, sir. So I wanted to ask that with the recent technological developments, AI has been quite a buzz in the news. So is it really, but using AI also has its implications on the coming of on the jobs of people. So is it really a good thing, or does it actually does it actually destroy the thinking process of humans?
Yes. So here's the problem. AI is going to change lives. It's going to change the way we work. It's going to change the way we think. And it's very important that every one of you start experimenting using AI. You have to understand it and learn its powers, and you have to understand it and learn its weaknesses, or else you will lose. So here's a good example. We used to have painters who painted pictures of people and pictures of landscape, and then the camera was invented. And when the camera became popular, oh my goodness, the painters were all frightened because they would lose all their jobs because they were painting pictures of people, and the camera could take a picture of the people, and pictures of the landscape, and the camera could take a picture of the landscape. So what happened? Did all the painters disappear? No. Did some painters lose their jobs because eventually people didn't need to have them paint pictures of the family, but they used cameras? Yeah, that took a long time, but it happened. But what also happened was painters, oh, they were very creative. So here's a simple-minded story about painters. The painter Picasso, who used to do painters of pictures of people and so on, that you could recognize as people and so on. But he started thinking and he said, you know, a person's face changes all the time. They're angry, or they look one way, and they're really happy, and they look another way, and they grow old, or they wake up feeling bad, or they wake up feeling happy. And so what he did is he painted faces of people who had all these expressions, all of them in one face. And so it didn't look like a human face anymore. It had all these strange things, but he was showing that this one painting can show all the different stages of emotion of a person. And what happened is that modern painting is exploring all sorts of things. But very few modern painters worry about painting a picture of a person. Some do, but when they do, they try to capture not the exact way the person looks, but the essence of the person, the feeling behind them. And so the picture is never quite, it's not realistic because it's trying to emphasize the good points or sometimes the bad points of a person. So, okay, what can AI do? Well, first of all, it's in its infancy. So don't trust what it does today as what it's going to do. It changes every month. And in 5 years, it'll be quite different. But one thing, how do we interact with computers? Menus and pointers and commands that we type in, computer commands, keyboards. We're going to have more and more conversational interactions, where it's like you have an assistant and you say, I wonder if you could do this for me, and here's what I want. And then the assistant does it, and he comes back, no, that's not what I was thinking. Can you do this? And you explain better what you want and how it should be modified. Well, that's how we're going to have to talk to our computers. And it will be able to take away some of the tasks that we can do today. Absolutely. It will do some of the tasks better. But here's what I've been telling journalists who are afraid of losing their jobs. If you go to a football game, newspapers publish, the game, what happened. Well, a computer can write that too. It was a wonderful game, and at the very end, there was this wonderful kick, and it went right into the goal. Well, everybody was looking to the left, it went on the goal, and the right, etc. Yeah, because the statistics, the AI can write an interesting story. But what the AI cannot do is tell the history of the person, of the kicker, and how long that person has practiced and learned, and the failures they've had, or the problems they've had, or how the team has changed, and a new coach has come, and they decided to change their. It can give you all the history behind it and the depth of it. Computers can't do that. So let the computer write the scores. So let the people talk about the story behind it. And that's what the journalists will do. Now, what will designers do? Well, one of the things that has happened already is designers have long been using Autodesk tools to automatically generate solutions. But they're almost always wrong. And so what you do is you ask it to generate solutions, and you say, no, no, no. Oh, that's good. Make more like that. Don't make as many like that. Make more like this. And they keep modifying it. And then in the end, they either comes out with something that's acceptable or no, none of them are any good. None of them are what I want. So you have to say, let me try to characterize what my problem really is and explain it to you better. And the designers who ended up good at this say, it makes me a better designer. So I don't spend my time drawing or using a computer tool to draw it. I spend my time thinking deeply about what the real problem is I'm trying to solve, and I let the computer help me. The calculator, the same way, when it first came out, people said, don't allow a calculator to school because people won't learn arithmetic. And they say now, don't allow chat in the school because people won't write essays, they'll have it write. And I say, no. Today, we require students to learn to use a calculator and to take it into examinations. Because who cares if you can do the arithmetic right or the algebra right? What I care about is, do you understand the equation? Can you develop the equation by yourself? Let the computer solve it, but do you get the right equation? Well, The same is true with chat. If it will make my essay better, good. I also believe that we should cheat. That is, if you're asked to write an essay for school, ask your friends if they have something you can borrow and use. But don't lie. Say you took it from them. In my new book, most of the ideas are not mine. I took them from all over, but I gave credit. I told them where the peat came from. And I think that makes my book better because it's not some crazy person with ideas. There are lots of other good people who've had those same ideas. So I think we learn how to adjust things, and we have to teach students differently too. We should encourage people to work with each other, to copy from each other, to work together as a team, because in the real world, almost nothing is done by a single person. It's done by a team collaborating. And when you ask, but who did the work? The answer is, we all did it. It was a team. So keep using chat, experiment, learn what it's good for, learn what it's bad for, but don't deny it. Always say, I did this with chat, or chat and I did this together, or I wrote the essay and it made it better, but then I had to change it. You get it?
Thanks.
Next.
So we will, Bhavisha, I think you asked a question, so we'll wait for Tanishka and Ariansh, I think. So Tanishka, I think I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You may switch on your video as you ask a question.
Yes.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask, like, as Shreya asked, that with the advancement of AI technology and like in and with the help of this design approach, we are able to create more and more advanced AI technologies. But with these advanced technologies, many people are losing their jobs. And in the future, like we see many people who lost their jobs, that what to do with that problem? Like how can we resolve that problem when we are resolving the problems around us with the help of AI?
I had a little bit of trouble understanding you. So what can we simplify the question to? If you lose your job because of new technology, I think that's part of your question.
Yes.
And the question then is what?
That with the advancement of
there's some issue in your internet connection, Tanishka. I think we're not able to hear you. Can you try again? Maybe try again. Now your video looks stable.
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
And also speak more slowly.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to ask that with the advancement of AI technologies and like nowadays we are able to see many AI generatives, like generative models. It can generate AI images within seconds and AI videos, generated videos within seconds, which many photographers take very long time, like months, to have a like shot of that picture. So what about those photographers or those people who are engaged with all these kind of things which are already being done by AI generators and this approach design?
Well, I think what you are really worried about is that I'm trying to say we can learn to use the new technologies to help us even do better, but there are people who will not adapt or who simply whose jobs really are going to be taken completely over. And what happens to them? And I believe that's a major societal problem. And that's where the government has to step in and help, because in the history of new technology being introduced, whether it was the automobile instead of horses, if it was the cameras instead of painting, if it was the industrial revolution of machines that made cloth instead of done by hand and weaving by hand, people lost jobs. Now, in the end, it was good for the world because prices went down, more people could afford the goods, And actually employment eventually increased even more than it was before. But that didn't mean that along the way, people lost their jobs. And the standard answer is, well, we should retrain them to be able to do new jobs, but you can't do that often. If they've been at a job for 30 or 40 years, it's not going to be easy or maybe even possible to retrain them. And some of the new skills require a tremendous amount of education, and then that may be much too late for people. And so I think governments will only have to work, and maybe designers can help use your creativity to imagine other activities that are important to the world, but that they can do. But you're absolutely right. That's going to be a major problem as we shift the kinds of employment. Once upon a time, I'll take the United States as an example. A huge percentage of the country were farmers. And today, a very small percentage are farmers as new machinery came in and new chemicals, fertilizers, and new ways of processing the foods, etc. We have very few farmers today. So what happened to the people who were employed as farmers? Well, over time, they just stopped. Children grew up in a farm family, but they didn't become farmers. So one thing to remember is that the change will not happen in one day. The change will take 10 or 15 years or 20 years even, which does give time for adaptation.
So we'll go to Aryash, and I'll request all of you to keep your questions short because we have very little time. Yes. Aryash, please switch on your video to ask your question.
Sorry for the inconvenience, sir. I cannot switch on my camera. Sorry, sir. But can you please repeat my question?
Please,
I'm
please
sorry,
go ahead.
too much background noise.
Yeah, too much background noise. I think, Arans, you better type it out. It will be better. We are not able to hear you clearly, actually.
Okay, sir. So please wait for a minute.
Okay, so we'll go to Vansh, and then we'll come back to Avishya and Shreya.
Sir, yesterday I had asked this question to both the speakers. I was not satisfied with their answers. I was hoping you could provide a more insightful answer. Yesterday, we were given examples of entire ecosystems being sustained just by resources present in nature.
I'm sorry.
My
Give an example. Your example, what kind of a system and how was it sustained?
Sir, houses were being built simply by resources being present in forests, or energy was being produced through bicycles. There were plenty of examples. Sir, my question was, by thinking of nature as an omnipotent entity, do we not exploit it?
So I think, Don, let me give you the context. So I think yesterday there are two sessions which are providing a lot of examples of alternative developmental models. And it was showing as Vansh was saying, that different architectural techniques to design locally, source material locally. And there are different alternative, alternative technological sources were shown. So the discussion as it went was that we need to look at nature as omnipotent, and nature is powerful. We need to understand its power, and it can lash back at times. So I think that Vansh asked that question, that by seeing nature as omnipotent, whether we are actually in the risk of exploiting nature more, because we might see that, okay, nothing will happen to nature even if we exploit it. So something like that.
We are, of course, are part of nature. We're not separate from nature. And nature can be destroyed. So we can't destroy the earth. Well, maybe modern warfare can, but mainly the earth is going to survive. But will people survive? I don't know. Will nature survive? Well, if nature doesn't survive, people won't survive. And so we cannot exploit nature, because in the end, it will hurt us. Whether you think it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's in the end, that's why I say we must protect all living things. plants, worms, scorpions, dangerous animals, wonderful animals. We call some animals pets. We call some animals food. We call some animals pests. And those are artificial terms. Pest. Why are some animals good and others are not good and they're pests? They're just doing the normal thing of nature. We shouldn't say some are good or some are bad. It's the way nature is. But to destroy an animal because we don't like it, or destroy a forest because it seems simple and we need the land to plant farms or something, may actually be harmful for life. So we have to be very sensitive to what we do with nature. Nature is a good model, though, because nature basically uses everything over and over and over again. When a tree grows or a plant or whatever grows and then dies, it becomes fertilizer for more plants. Or the seeds get spread. In fact, fruits are carefully designed, if you will, by nature, so that animals will eat the fruits and wander about and eventually deposit those seeds in other places where the new fruits can grow. And so destroying that destroys our own lives. So the answer is, how come we can't keep doing this? The answer is we shouldn't and we can't.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So I think Aranj has put in the question.
Yes.
So the question is, we live. Aranj, you may mute it. I can read the question out. We live in an era in which we have more than we
I
need.
can read it. Yes.
Okay, yeah, please.
Which we have more than we need. By this, we generate waste more than we can handle. So how to handle this system? You are correct. That's a very good point. And we have to change human behavior. And the hardest thing to change in the world is, well, the hardest thing is to change cultures. But culture is simply a combination of human behaviors. So we have to change human behavior, and that's hard. And it has to be done through education. But government can help. That's what laws are about. Almost every law is written because there's some problem in the world, and the law is trying to stop it. But the best laws are ones that try to not tell you what to do and not to do, but to try to aim for a better life and try to encourage the better life and try to discourage things that get in the way. And maybe that when people discard things, they have to pay for it. And maybe when we buy something, the cost of discarding it, of taking care of the discards, is built into the price you pay in the first place, which would make companies try to make things that last longer, since you have to pay more for it. And maybe that would also discourage people from buying it quite so often because it costs too much money. But that will be hard to do because people will really object very strongly. And so there's no easy answer. And I don't have an answer. But we have to do that. You're absolutely right. But let me tell you, the advertisement world and the marketing world has been committed to making people buy all this stuff, as as Victor Papanek said, with making people to buy the stuff they don't need. And so why can't we change that? Why don't we, in the schools where we teach people marketing and advertisement, why don't we teach them to be responsible citizens, not that we increase the sales simply for the sake of increasing sales? But you're right, it's a very difficult problem. But it's self-imposed, it's artificial. We've trained people we've trained people in our schools, especially the MBA schools, how to get people to buy and buy and buy. Well, why don't we teach in the MBA schools how to stop that?
Okay, so the two last questions, Bhavishya and then Shia.
Yes, sir. Sir, I had two doubts. First was how to know what is the right time to introduce the solution of a problem.
Well, I've answered that question in different forms already today. We never know what is the right answer. That's why I'm firmly a believer of what's called iterative design. in which we try a very small sample of people, we test it and we see how it works. And then we do it to a larger sample and we modify it each time as we learn. And even though we'd have the final thing, we may discover, no, it's actually causing the wrong behavior, we stop. So that we don't often know beforehand. But if we realize that we always have to change what we're doing, we should be monitoring and assessing how well it's meeting the goals. And when it's failing, we change the product, we change what we're doing, we change the system.
Okay, sir. And sir, one more thing that you said we shall use AI and our skills to work. But sir, wouldn't it make us less productive for the works we use AI?
It'll make you more productive. No, you look at the people who are doing it well. No, because it's not, the goal of AI is not to replace you. It's to enhance you, make you better. Again, did the calculator replace people doing arithmetic? Yeah, it replaced the dull part of arithmetic, but allowed us to work on more difficult, complex problems. Because now that we could actually solve the problem before, it might take a year to solve this problem, and now the machine can do it in a day. Okay, good, wonderful. And now we can get more things done. So I don't see that as a problem. But only if we work hard. Don't forget, who's going to decide what the AI does and how we build it and how we interact with it? It should be designers. If you let the engineers do it, who knows what will happen? Don't let the engineers take over. Work with the engineers. You need them, but work with them to make sure this thing fits human needs.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, the last question of the day, Sia. Keep it short.
Sir, I actually have two quick questions.
Okay, go ahead.
But I'll just so how can we convince people to adapt and choose what's actually right for them, adapt to the service model you were talking about? Because often we choose comfort over what is actually right, even though it's better than what we're using.
Yes. So you have to make sure that what is right is also more comfortable.
You can't always guarantee that, right?
So, I mean, if you force people to do a behavior, natural response of many people is to resist and to figure out clever ways around your forcing. And so forcing people is never the answer. So it's the standard names, at least in the United States, is a carrot and the stick. The argument is a carrot is attractive, so we're going to give people attractive things, and that will make them do things in order to get the wonderful attraction thing. And the stick is the way of punishing. If the person or animal is not doing what you want, you punish it. Well, I'm in favor of rewarding good behavior, not in punishing bad behavior. But so we want to make it so the good behavior is more attractive, maybe cheaper, maybe more effective. But the way to stop bad behavior may be in the end the legal system, because that's what laws try to do, is stop bad behavior. Now, they don't always work, by the way. I mean, have laws stopped people from murdering other people? No. But it actually has diminished the rate dramatically. So as I said, changing human behavior is extremely difficult. But I think the way to do it is by making the more appropriate behavior be the more attractive, easier to do, and better for everyone.
Isn't that a lot of responsibility on the designers then to convince people and build stuff for them that is good?
Yes, I think that's designers need more responsibility, but I want to point out it isn't done by designers alone. Designers, I think, are good because we think about things that are good for people, that improve people's lives, but we don't know all the solution. We need to work with lawyers. We need to work with economists. We need to work with politicians. We need to work with the social scientists. It's going to be a joint thing. And we need to work with the people we're trying to change as well. The one way to reduce crime in a neighborhood is to have the neighborhood help reduce the crime. In Bangalore, people used to throw garbage, and they still do, on the streets or in the sidewalks and on the grass by the sidewalks or the weeds by the sidewalks. So what did people do to stop it? They cleaned it up, and they made it so nice and clean that people didn't want to throw the trash there. But they also had to provide a place to throw trash. Because why did people throw trash there? Because they didn't know where to dispose of it. And if one person threw trash a place, then the next person coming by said, oh, it's a place I can throw my trash. So by keeping it clean, people stopped. And they actually, by doing a lot of these things, working with the neighborhoods, cleaned up many, many parts of the city. And they never asked for permission, because they knew that once they got into the government, it would be forever to get permission. So what happened was, when the newspaper discovered they were doing good, they said, well, who gave you permission? They would name the politician that was responsible for that part of the city and said, oh, we had this wonderful politician who really helped us and made us make a better city. And then when the newspaper would ask the politician about it, well, the politician was asked why he did a good thing. So obviously he said, oh, well, yes, of course. Very clever. Very clever.
Right. And also,
No, see, I think we'll end here. It's already
it's
no problem. It's already late.
For me, it is.
It's
It's
already
10 o'clock.
yes.
And since I have to wake up tomorrow, I'm not sure what time. Maybe 5
Yes.
o'clock.
Yes. No. I think we have already taken a lot of your time.
But
Yeah,
actually,
sorry, please.
there's a rule about giving a talk, which is always leave the audience with wanting more. We'll stop before we answer all the questions.
True. So I think I'll also, Sia, we'll take up your question. We have the whole 2 more hours or so left. So we'll take up these things. So I think so. Thank you, Don, for this again fascinating discussion and the way you have weaved in so many different concepts. And we are actually trying to, and I'm going to have a session with the students after this, where I'll try to kind of consolidate all the different speakers who have kind of shown different parts of this puzzle and try to provide students a comprehensive framework to see if they can work towards their project more with all the necessary tools and techniques that they need. So thank you again, Don, for this for joining with us, and we sincerely hope we will be able to see you in person soon later this year, and we will have a public talk with that.
I hope that will be possible, and thank you
Yes.
for inviting me and for asking those very important questions. But I
Yes.
know, so good night for me and good morning for you.
Yes, thank you, Don. See you everyone. So please hold on others. Yeah, bye, Don. Okay, so what we'll do now is that we have ended the session for this one. So we will have a 10-minute break. So we will start our next session sharp at you should be back, and we'll start at 10:45. So you can be on the call. You can switch off your video. We'll start our session at 10:45, and then we'll have the other details about the session. Okay, see you folks.